Right, this is in response to a message I have just read on my St Camilla's Part 3 by a man called Paul Newbury. Now, Paul Newbury, you say you were on Sea House, 1971, which is where, when I were on there, I were in there right up to 74. So at the same time, you'll have known Chris Axel from York. He had thick, long hair, just less than 5 foot. Played guitar all the time. And he would always in dining room on a night after showers and that, strumming on his guitar. I used to go over and listen to him and have a chat, and we'd have a smoke and that. Sometimes Avron would come over and torment us to death, so we'd have to attack him. And you see these, Avron, you remember that swallow, don't you? And you remember that, don't you? Supposed to be devil's head and cross. And here, Simon Templar, looked like Simon Templar, supposed to be a devil. Yeah, Avron, I bet you're laughing now, aren't you, mate? You scarred me for life. Well, me and another lad, and I'm ashamed to say I can't remember his name. And my mum said that he looked like our Chris. She used to fetch him cigs when she come to see me. He used to call me his brother, and me and him used to gang up on Avron and attack Avron, twist him up and everything. But he was big, Avron. He was about 6 foot then, and he was hefty. He was throwing stuff about on tractor all day. Avron and Axel did all ploughing and everything up down at farm. All to do with tractors. Avron and Axel used to argue who were getting best jobs and that. It was brilliant because we were all best of mates. Avron, he was a great lad. He learnt me a lot. And what it is, you'll remember Mr. Peake, won't you? Mr. 8th Dan, 1965's Commonwealth judo gold medalist, England's gold medalist, and here he is, mate. You remember him, don't you? Mr. David Peake, housemaster, taught plumbing through day. He taught plumbing up to Sitting Gills through day, and he was an housemaster on a night. Nonce. One of the biggest nonces in the place. Mr. 8th Dan Judo Commonwealth gold medalist. There it is round his neck. They should have choked him with it. Now, on my first night here, there were 3 lads in our dormitory, and I went in and they told me Mr. Peake was on tonight, and he came in our dorm regular and nonced a lad in corner bed. So anyway, I said not no more. I was 14, less than 5 foot, 8 stone, wet through. So you can imagine, here he is, Mr. Kung Fu, Mr. 8th Dan Judo champion. 16 stone, 6'6", and there you can see him, look, house of a man. House of a man. Nonce. And what he did, He came in that night and he started tampering with lad in corner bed. And I jumped up on bed and I said, "Get out of here, you nonce. You're not noncing anybody else in here ever again. And you can do what you like. I'm reporting you first thing in the morning." So anyway, that's exactly what I did. But he dragged me out and he battered me all right showers, and he kept saying to me, "You're going to do what?" And I said, "I'm going to report you in the morning." So next morning I reported him to Mr. Robinson, who was housemaster then. You remember Paul, yeah? Paul Newbury, you'll remember him. What they used to do, after tea, you all used to go up and have to go in showers. And you went in one end and you worked your way down. There were about 8 showers in a row. And you worked your way down like that. And Mr. Peake would be sat there shouting, "Next." And then you'd have one out, one in. And you work your way down. And the way it worked, by the time you got to Mr. Peake, he was certain he'd perved on you enough. And he would have it, "Next lad, in, next." And then on a night he'd come back and nonce kids. And then if we caught him, I were one of the older boys, who, as I've said, we had to learn a trade. Mr. Peake learnt plumbing, and he plumbed them himself on a night as well. And then painters and rest of us grassed him up. We grassed this man up every time he nonced anybody and made sure it was put down in records. I reported him every time as well to Mr. W.G. Bashforth, Wakefield, head of probation Wakefield at the time. Now, Mr. Peake got charged with 4 noncing and 4 beatings, because he beat the ones that he couldn't nonce because we grassed him up. He nonced other lads, we grassed him up, he beat us. So they charged him with malicious beatings of minors, and they had him nicked for 4 charges. 4 charges noncing, 4 charges beatings. Now they'd cocked up in trial. So prosecuting Simon Hickey revealed that the Crown Prosecution Service would not seek a retrial, and the judge formally entered not guilty verdicts on the last 2 charges. Mr. Peake grew up in York area and is a former judo international and British Yorkshire heavyweight champion. He ran judo clubs all over the place, all over Selby and everywhere, and he nonced all kids. Now, they charged him with 4 beatings as well, and because of technicalities, the judge ordered that they were found not guilty. When they find you not guilty, it don't mean you haven't done it. It means they've cocked up, so they've got to let you go. And unless they come up with further evidence, you can't be brought back for that same charge again. But Mr. Peake knew that, and he knew there were other boys, i.e. me. And Mr. Shaw, who came to my house, didn't explain things to me. I even rang him up and said, "Has Mr. Peake been charged with beatings?" And he said, "We're not looking to prosecute anybody else at this time." And this is what they did. They allowed him to escape, where he fled to France because he knew there was other charges to come. So this coward of a man and his family fled to France. And this is his obituary, where he died in August 2020 of Alzheimer's, and I hope he suffered every day, and I hope all his family suffer from now on, because you knew what he was doing. Don't you tell me you didn't know. You did know. All them people weren't wrong. They weren't telling lies. Them boys weren't telling lies. Major Connor's wife said the boys were telling lies as well when we used to point the finger at her and say, you know what he's done. You know what Major Connor's doing. He used to have the boys sent up to his house from the units on pretence of cutting his lawns. Yeah, they were cutting lawns. Yeah, of course he was. And then he was tampering with lads while his wife were out gallivanting off all of her. And then every day on his way to work, because his house was raised up, administration block were there next to the church, which that man tried to pass off as Major Connor's house. No. Shame on you, choir boy. Shame on you. Telling lies, stood on church grounds. And you said, no, that house, that there was Major Connor's house. That building there that's boarded up. I said, no, it wasn't. That was the administration. And behind that was the joiner's shop, the brickies shop, and another shop. Or was it a plasterer's shop? And then Mr. Peake's shop was up by the painters, up in the long type pork cabin type ones. There were wooden ones then. Now you've built chalet type buildings, but same size, on same footings, I'll bet. House of Horrors, all of it. Major Connor's house, House of Horrors. All houses of horrors have been flattened all over the country. Major Connor's and rest of other units are all still there. All need to be flattened. Who wants to live in a house of horrors? But you knew, didn't you, when you bought the property? And you thought, oh, lovely grounds. Price can only go up. Nobody talks about all them kids anymore. You didn't bank on people like me, did you? This man is responsible for my partner behaviour when I left St Camilla's in 1974. From then I did 2 wax of Borstal. And I were in and out of prison all over the country, right through riots and everything. All a direct result of the mental torture that this man put me through. And you know, Mr. Newbury, you know as well that I'm telling the truth. So please, keep in touch, because I'm going back to do St Camilla's Part 4. And I would love it if you came along, mate. I would even come and pick you up at home. So keep in touch, mate, and I promise you I will pick you up when I go back and do Part 4. I need to know the vicar's name from 1972 to 74. It wasn't the one that's there now, and it wasn't the prior to before. The monumental bench, Mr. McCarthy, I thought that was him. I'm mistaken by that, and I apologise to Mr. McCarthy. I have got no disrespect for Mr. McCarthy whatsoever. it's the vicar that was there between 72 and 74. I would love to hear his name. And then I want St Camilla's new vicar to hear my confession. And that's what I'll be asking him. So, Mr. Peake, thank you. What you did to me created mental health issues that had me hating everybody. It made me atheist and everything. Because you went to church every week and said a few Hail Marys. They made me choir boy, but you know about that, don't you, Mr. Peake? I'm CAV. Why would they make me choir boy in a Roman Catholic church? Ding-a-ling-a-ling-a-ling. And you had to let the bell ring to count to 4 in your head. Not 5 or 3, 4. And then it'd all go quiet. You'd count 4 and then you stop the bell. And then the vicar would carry on with his sermon. And when he said amen, you count 4 again. Then ring the bell. Ding-a-ling-a-ling-a-ling. Count 4 and stop it. Not 5 or 3. Now, these people went up on units and said a few into church and said a few Hail Marys, and then went up on the units, and as I've said, nonced kids. Then when we grassed them up next morning, and to us probation, and to anybody else that would listen, Major Connor's wife ended up stabbing him to death because she knew that we weren't telling lies. All you people knew as well. Mr. McHugh knew as well, didn't you, Mr. McHugh? Just take one bite out of him, Penny. Just take one bite out of him. How's Dominic? Did he keep up the racing pigeons that I brought him home and learnt him all about? And how's Mary? She used to make me a cup of tea. She was a very nice lass. Mrs. McHugh, I've all the respect for you. But Mr. McHugh, he was a bully. Just take one bite out of him, Penny. And I believe that to be Mr. McHugh, the one that tried to pass off as the admin as Major Connor's house. That's who I would say was Mr. McHugh. And his ulterior motive is I bet he's the owner of that house. Well, I'm glad, because you're living in a house of horrors. Now, I know there were a lot of other atrocities that went off in St Camilla's. And you've got your own nightmares, Paul. But I still suffer mine. Mr. Peake used to come up to me and he'd go, Taylor, boot room. And off I'd go toddling to boot room, wondering whether he were going to pull me about my boots. Because they check your boots every night, you'd have to polish them. Get a member of staff to check them and put them in your cubby hole in boot room. Only he battered me all round that boot room on a regular basis. He tied me to the chair and he had an inner tube, motorbike inner tube in the sink. You remember sinking corner, don't you, mate? And he pulled it out and I'd be tied to the chair. And he'd come and pull it over your head. And he knew how long to leave it on because they took you to Leeds International Swimming Pool. I loved it because Mr. Snedden used to take us. My boss, painter, one eye, big BMC type van, and they take us to Leeds International and you had to duck under the water and they timed you. And you had to beat your time each week. If you swam one width last week, you had to do 2 this week. And then you could go off rest at public. And it improved, but he knew how long to leave that in a tube on your head. And he'd leave you gagging. And I'd be going, bastard, bastard. And then he'd pull it off and bang me straight at side, poof, and knock me straight across boot room. And I'd be still tied to the chair like that. Then he'd drag me about, drag the chair with me on it, pull the rope off me, and then he'd say, get it cleaned up. And I'd say, yeah, then I'll be grassing you up as well. And he'd go, you what? And I'd say, yeah, go on. You're getting grassed up, don't you worry about that. And I'd go in and I'd report him to other members of staff, and they'd listen upstairs, up to your dorm. Up to your dorm. It would all start me. Next morning I'd be nicked false allegations against a member of staff. But I still reported him. Every single time I reported him. And then them cunts let him escape. Major Connor, I don't know if McHugh got nicked. Peake, they let him escape. In fact, there were too many to name. I'm not going to start. So I'll just say thanks, like, share, subscribe. Thank you very much.